So we are in the new creation, what King Aswapati is experiencing there. In this vast outbreak of perfection's law, imposing its fixity on the flux of things, he saw a hierarchy of lucent planes enfiefed to this highest kingdom of God's state, attuning to one truth, their own right rule. Each housed the gladness of a bright degree, alone in beauty, perfect in self-kind, an image cast by one deep truth's absolute, married to all in happy difference. Each gave its powers to help its neighbor's paths, but suffered no diminution by the gift. Profiteers of a mystic interchange, they grew by what they took and what they gave. All others they felt as their own complements, one in the might and joy of multitude. Even in the poise where oneness draws apart to feel the rapture of its separate selves, the soul in its solitude yearned towards the all, and the many turned to look back at the one. An all-revealing, all-creating bliss, seeking for forms to manifest truths divine, aligned in their significant mystery, the gleams of the symbols of the ineffable, blazoned like hues upon a colorless air, on the white purity of the witness soul. These hues were the very prism of the Supreme, His beauty, power, delight, creation's cause. A vast truth consciousness took up these signs to pass them on to some divine child heart that looked on them with laughter and delight and joyed in these transcendent images, living and real as the truths they house. The Spirit's white neutrality became a playground of miracles, a rendezvous for the secret powers of a mystic timelessness. It made of space a marvel house of God. It poured through time its works of ageless might, unveiled seen as a luring, rapturous face, the wonder and beauty of its love and force. The eternal goddess moved in her cosmic house, sporting with God as a mother with her child. To him, the universe was her bosom of love. His toys were the immortal verities. All here self-lost had there its divine place. The powers that here betray our hearts and err were there sovereign in truth, perfect in joy, masters in a creation without flaw, possessors of their own infinitude. I think we're starting with you, Nergis, yeah, today.
In this vast outbreak of perfection's laws, imposing its fixity on the flux of things, he saw a hierarchy of lucent planes, entry to this highest kingdom of God's state.
Yes. So this vast outbreak of perfection's law, that's a way of summing up what we have read in the previous section. All these oneness and manyness in harmony. It's a vast outbreak of the law of perfection. And that law is imposing its fixity. It doesn't move, it doesn't change, that law of oneness. It imposes its law on the flux of things, the flow, the changing process, all the variety and difference. It's all governed by one law. So in that, King Asvapati, he saw a hierarchy of lucent planes, planes of existence, full of light, arranged in an order. Earlier, we had seen him see this great ladder of planes joining the spirit's extremes. We were reading about it just on Sunday, and then in the beginning of book 2, he sees those hierarchy of planes like a great mountain or tower, the world stare. Now he's seeing similarly a hierarchy of planes, but this is in the house of the spirit. This is in the new creation. And these planes which he's seeing now are full of light, and they are all enfiefed to this highest kingdom of God state. So this is a word, enfiefed, which refers to the feudal system. A feudal system which was common in Europe in the Middle Ages, which was common in Tibet up to the time of the Chinese invasion, which was common in ancient India, where There's an emperor or a king who has his vassals, the knights, the warriors, the sub-rulers who are loyal to him. So each one of those is independent in his own realm, in his own estate, but he owes his loyalty to the ruler. And when the ruler calls, he has to go and support him and help him. The knights in the Middle Ages, no, each of them, they had their own estate and they could have their own knights and esquires, but if the king called them, then they had to go and fight for him. So this highest kingdom is that new creation, no? And with the oneness, what was described before. And now he's seeing that there's all these many, many, many planes which are subject to that highest state. And he's going to say something about those independent fiefs, or fiefdoms we call them in English, or these estates, areas of authority that these planes have. Yes?
Returning to one truth, the one right word, each house the levels of right
Degree.
alone in beauty, perfect and self-mind, an image cast by one deep stripes
Truth.
is absolute truth, married to all in happy difference.
Yes. So now he's talking about the planes. Each of these planes attunes, harmonizes their own right rule. Each of them has its own dharma, we can say, its own way of representing the truth. But they're all attuned in harmony with that overarching, overruling truth. Each of them housed, it provides a home for the gladness, the bright happiness of a particular degree of light and truth. Each of them is alone, unique in their particular kind of beauty. Each of them is perfect in its own distinctive way. Each of them is an image, one image cast by that one deep absolute truth. And they are all married, united to all the others in a state of happy difference.
That means there is one body and vibration is merged with
Here it's when things are beginning to be individualized, but in their individualization they are still ruled and connected and harmonized by that one truth. And this is, I think, how we imagine the ideal society, no? That everybody is unique and special, each is perfect, yes, in their own way, but each is aware that they belong with all the others, that all the other ones who are different from them are also images of that same overruling truth. And all of them together are necessary to express something of that truth. No? I think this is what we mean when we use this little inadequate little term, human unity. And what we dream of here in Auroville, that everybody would be expressing fully and richly and complexly their own uniqueness and be perfect in their own self-kind, and be in harmony with all the others, because all are in harmony with the one truth, which is perhaps the spirit of Auroville or some higher truth beyond that. And of course, this state which he's describing here is what Sri Aurobindo and Mother tell us can be brought about only by the supermind. If we are all supramentalized, then automatically it will have this harmonizing effect. We will all be aware of our connectedness and the fact that we are all serving one truth. So he continues with this idea. Alexei.
Each gave its powers to help its neighbor's heart, but suffered no diminution by the gift. Profiteers of a mystic interchange, they grew by what they took and what they gave. All others they felt as their own complements, one in the might and joy of multitude.
Yes. So here, of course, he's talking about those planes. They are planes of existence containing many, many worlds. But each of them is unique and perfect in its own self-kind. But in the same way, we can think of them as individuals. No? Each of these planes, each of these individuals gave its powers. Freely it shares all the powers and possibilities it has to help its neighbor's parts, to help and all those who are around. And by that giving, it doesn't become less in any way. So here he uses, to stamp this on our minds, he uses a very vivid word. He says profiteers. Profiteers, normally it's a very negative thing. No? They are the people who take advantage of other people's misfortunes to make a fortune, no? During wartime or famine or whatever. But he says these people are, or these planes are profiteering from a mystic interchange. They increase themselves, they grew by what they took, but also by what they gave. Oh, yes. They felt all the others as their own complements. Please look at the spelling of this word. If you change just one letter, you don't change the pronunciation, but you change the meaning completely. It's complements. If we change that E into an I, then it means you say something very nice to somebody. This afternoon as I came in, Yuli paid me a compliment. She said, "Oh, you are looking very nice today." No? Yeah, a compliment. But complement, it means something that makes something else more complete.
French.
Also French, yeah. So Sri Aurobindo tells us that all opposites, everything that seems to us opposites, are not really enemies. They complement each other. They complete each other. So all these different aspects, images of the one truth, they complement each other and they feel that they complement each other. They felt one with all the others in this power and joy of multitude, of manyness. Eve?
Even in the poise where oneness draws apart to feel the rapture of its separate selves, the soul in its solitude yearns towards the whole, and the many turn to look back at the one.
Yes. So we read in the Life Divine about this possibility on that highest level of the consciousness having three poises at the same time, exactly the same word. There can be the poise of concentrated oneness. There can be the poise in which the oneness is aware of all its many potentialities as separated from each other but still within itself. And then it can also take the poise of being identified with each of those many, many possibilities projected outside itself. So even in that poise, where the oneness draws itself apart to feel the rapture of its separate selves, of its many individual parts separate from it, still the oneness is felt, the soul, the one, without a second, in its solitude, feels drawn and attracted to the all the many, and the many turned to look back at the one, feeling their connectedness, although they are individuals and in a way separate, still they know, they're aware of their origin and their oneness with all the others. James.
And all revealing, all creating bliss, seeking for forms to manifest truth divine, aligned in their significant mystery, the gleams of the symbols of the inevitable, blazoned like hues upon a colorless air, on the white purity of the witness soul.
So there's a dynamic bliss, a bliss which is all revealing. It has to show all the many, many different possibilities of the one, and all it creates all these different forms or symbol figures. It's looking for forms to manifest, to give a separate, defined existence to these divine truths. And what it does is that it lines up, puts into an order the gleam of the symbols of the ineffable. All these different symbols of that which can never be expressed, each of them has their own light. What that bliss does is to arrange them all in an expressive way. Although it's still mysterious, it has a meaning. And these gleams of these symbols, they are like, he says, colors, hues. They are blazoned. It's a word from the art or science of heraldry, which also belongs to the feudal system. All of those knights and warriors, they had to be able to be identified, for example, in battle. So they used to have their symbols. There's a whole language of heraldry, and there are still to this day, there are official heralds who keep the record of that language and the arrangement of these symbols and which one belongs to who. And if a new child is born into one of those families, what will be his his symbol. No? So something that is there, for example, on your shield or on your flag, that is blazoned, and that is your blazon, your identifying symbol. So the spirit is pure and white and colorless. No? But when it gets expressed in all these different symbols, they are like hues, they are like colors that are blazoned, each of them giving its sign. Mother also said these planes which she drew in her map, each of them, she said, is a special quality of light, like a hue, like a color. So all these planes are there arranged on the white purity of the witness soul. In a similar way, he says, like colors on colorless air, what happens at sunset. That actually the air doesn't have any particular color, but as the sun's going down, everything turns pink or yellow or amazing. No? Mahalinga?
These hues are the very prism of the Supreme, His beauty, power, delight, creation's cause.
You can go on.
A vast truth consciousness took up these signs to pass them on to some divine child heart that looked on them with laughter and delight, and joy in these transcendent images, living and real as the truths they house.
Yes. So the prism is that glass that we use to split up the white light into its hues, the 7 basic hues. So these hues that are blazoned on the white purity of the witness soul are the very prism of the Supreme. The Supreme himself is that white light which is being split up into many different hues and eventually forms of manifesting himself. His beauty and his power and his delight is the cause of all this creation. So there's that creative bliss aligning these hues of the Supreme, and there's a vast truth consciousness which receives these signs and passes them on to some divine child heart, some special power of the divine that looks at them, which enjoys them, looks on them with laughter and delight, and enjoys these transcendent images.
Child Krishna.
Perhaps it's Krishna, yes, which enjoys all these images, which are, he says, as living and as real as the truths that they house. They are expressing some particular aspect or image of the Supreme, and the expression is as living and as real as the truth that it's embodying or giving form to. Patricia?
The Spirit's white neutrality became a playground of miracles, a rendezvous for the secret powers of a mystic timelessness. It made a space a marble house of God. It poured through time its works of ageless night, unveiled, seen as a luring, rapturous face, the wonder and beauty of its love and force.
Yes. So that pure, white, unchanging eternity of the spirit, its white neutrality, which embraces all possibilities, gets expressed as a playground of miracles. All these possibilities get played out. A rendezvous, a meeting place for the secret powers of that mystic timelessness. Something that's beyond time gets expressed in a kind of space, in a kind of time. Space spreading out in this way, and time spreading out in succession. It made of space a marvel house of God. It poured through time, through all the moments of time, its works of ageless might. They are ageless because they don't belong in time, but now they get expressed in time. And all together, these things unveiled are seen as a luring, attracting, rapturous face. Perhaps again it's the face of Krishna, which is so adorable, no? All the wonder and beauty of its love and force. It may be Krishna, but it may be the mother, because the next sentence speaks about the eternal goddess. Yeah? Joel?
The eternal goddess moved in her cosmic house, sporting with God as a mother with her child. To him, the universe was her bosom of love. His toys were the immortal verities.
Yes. So here we've got the two in one, no? The eternal goddess there, moving in her cosmic house, that universe that she's created, playing with God. Here the relationship is of a mother and a child. And this God is loving her as his mother. And the whole universe is her bosom of love. And the toys that he plays with are those immortal truths, those many, many different aspects of the Supreme. Because of that, because all this becomes a creation with its many different aspects, then there's a consequence. Maria, you can read.
All here, self-love had there its divine place. The powers that here betray our hearts and air were their sovereign in truth, perfect in joy, masters in a creation without flaw, possessors of their own infinitude.
Yes. So everything here that seems to be fallen, distorted, perverted, lost, it's lost itself, its true self. But also there's the suggestion that self-lost, it might have chosen to get lost. It might have deliberately lost itself. Self-lost. It's lost to itself, but it might have deliberately lost itself. So here all these powers are self-lost, wandering, betraying our hearts, making mistakes. But there, each of these powers has its divine place. There they are sovereign in truth, full of royal power, perfect in joy, masters in a creation without flaw. We feel that we live in a flawed creation, one that is somehow damaged and spoiled. No? So a flaw is an imperfection. But there's no imperfection. Everything is in its divine form and its divine place.
When he talks about powers, he talks about gods.
He's just going to tell us now, comes next, he's going to list examples of these powers. First he speaks about mind.
The mind of night.
And then life, and then matter. So these are powers which here seem to be flawed. They betray our hearts. They don't follow their divine law. But there they have their divine place. So in their divine place, what are they like? So what about mind? Prasanna, would you read?
Their mind, a splendid sun of vision's rays, shaped substance by the glory of its thoughts, and moved amidst the grandeur of its dreams.
Thank you. So mind, there it's like a sun, and its rays are powers of vision, of sight. And what does it do? It shapes substance by the glory of its thoughts. The mind is able to shape the forms of things, substance. Not exactly matter, but substance. And it moves amid the grandeur, the glory and beauty of its dreams. It shapes the universe around itself. That's what our mind does too, but our dreams are not full of grandeur. They are distorted and troubled. And we are unwilling, without knowing it, we are shaping the substance around ourselves all the time in the image of those troubled dreams of ours. And one of the powers of mind is imagination. What is imagination really meant to do? What is that great power of imagination? What is its work? Yuli, would you read?
Imagination's great ensorceling rod summoned the unknown and gave to it a home, outspread luxuriantly in golden air. Truth, iris-colored wings of fantasy, or sang to the intuitive heart of joy. Wonders, dream notes that ring the real close.
Thank you. Imagination's great ensorceling rod. If you are an enchanter, you have a wand, a stick, a rod, with which you do your magic. You wave your stick, and through that you spread your magic. Ensorceling. It's also a very poetic, perhaps an old word for making magic, ensorceling. So the fairy godmother, she turns the pumpkin into a coach and the rags into a golden dress.
I'm thinking of Harry Potter.
Yes, Harry Potter, of course. Anybody who does magic has to have that magic wand. And you remember what we were reading about this power of the mother of the subliminal? Her ensorceling rod was actually mind itself. No? So here it's the power of imagination can do magic. It summons the unknown. That's what the sorcerer does. No? He calls the spirits to help him. It summons things that are unknown and gives them a home, a place, somewhere to live. One way it does this is to spread out luxuriantly in golden air truth's iris-colored wings of fantasy. As if these imaginations, these fantasies, they are beautiful birds or maybe beautiful butterflies with iris-colored wings. Iris is the rainbow. She's the Roman goddess of the rainbow. So something that is iris-colored, it has all the colors of the rainbow in it. Her name is there in our word iridescent. You know, something that has, if you put petrol in water or something that is shimmering with all the colors of the rainbow, or the opal. We have the iris of the eye, yes, yeah. So it might be like that, colors creating these forms, or the imagination might express itself in music, in sounds. It sang to the intuitive heart of joy that can seize those sounds that are called, imagined, wonders, dream notes. And those notes, they are dreams, they are fantasies, they are imaginations, but they are bringing the real reality, the real with a capital R, they are bringing it close. This is what our imagination is supposed to do for us. It's to bring what is real closer.
This is hour of God. Very close.
Sorry?
Is it the hour of God? Something like the same meaning? Heel close?
No. This is not the close. This is close. It brings something close. Brings it near.
Yes.
It's an adjective, not a noun. Yeah, it's not a close. It's bringing something near. This is what imagination should do for us. This is what art should do for us. It should bring what is there, real in the higher worlds, should bring it close to us, or close to matter. So those dream notes of wonder, of marvel, formed in the divine mind, in the imaginations and fantasies of the divine mind, they bring these wonderful possibilities closer to manifestation. So it's continuing about imagination, Francesca.
Its power that makes the unknowable near and true. In the temple of the ideal shrined the one.
Shrine.
The one. It peopled thought and mind and happy sense, filled with bright aspects of the mind of God, and living persons of the One Supreme, the speech that voices the ineffable, the ray revealing unseen presences, unseen presences, the virgin forms through which the formless shines, the world that usher divine experience, and the ideas that crowd the infinite.
The word The word. Imagine that that is not an O there in the middle of the word, but an E, word. Yeah?
Word.
Yes? Yes.
It's like word.
Word, yeah. Like bird. Actually, it's the same sound. Word.
Is that phonetics? Is that phonetics?
What do you mean, is that phonetics?
Saying for the pronunciation, make the O and E, word, instead of word.
Yes, if we see O-R, we think of or, no? So we feel like saying ward or world. You Russians are doing that all the time, no? So that's just the vagaries of English spelling. And we have to know that O-R doesn't always say or. It only says or when it stands by itself. Sometimes it makes the same sound as IR or ER, you know, because English spelling is not phonetic. Yeah. Yeah. So think of a word that it rhymes with. Bird is probably the best one. Word rhymes with bird. Yeah. And that sound is the most common sound in English. And it gets spelt in many, many, many different ways. So its power, the power of imagination that makes the unknowable near and true. Sri Aurobindo is trying to stimulate our imaginations all the time. No? That's what he's doing with all these wonderful words and images. Because it's imagination that has the power to make the unknowable somehow near and true. So that power created a shrine, a place for a divinity to live, enshrined the One in the temple of the ideal, what should be an ideal form. Of course, once it's been turned into an ideal, a truth has been turned into an ideal, it's been given a fixed form. In a way, it's coming down from the freedom of the original reality of that truth. It gets fixed by imagination as an ideal in a particular form, in a particular shrine.
The forms of gods are like this, no?
Yes, or for us perhaps truth is an ideal, and when we say that word we have an imagination of what is truth. But that's tremendously limited, unbelievably limited compared with what truth is in its reality, or what is good, what is right. Now, these are all ideals, even what is beautiful. There are different ideals, what is beauty.
Ideal forms.
Yes, these are ideal forms. Yeah. But that power of imagination fills the mind and the thought and even the senses, the happy senses, as if filling them with beings. It peoples the thought and the mind and the happy sense with all these bright aspects of the power of God. Fills them with all these imaginations that bring the unknowable near and true. These living persons who are all persons of one supreme. And also the speech. Speech, of course, is a function of mind. A speech that voices, that somehow tries to express what is beyond expression. The ray, just one ray of that supreme sun. But that one ray is enough to reveal, to show presences that otherwise we wouldn't see, that were unseen. And then there are the forms, these virgin forms, pure and perfect forms, through which the formless presence shines. The Lord is formless because he can't be limited by any of these forms, but he can express himself in so many different forms. No? And the Word, the creative Word that ushers divine experience. To usher somebody, it's to invite them in, show them the way in, into us. No? And the ideas, all those real ideas that crowd the infinite and which can get expressed in a creation. Handel.
There was no God between the source and fact. Ever they reply like a bird to calling forth. The will obeyed the thought, the act the will. There was a harmony woven twixt soul and soul. A marriage with an eternity divinized the time.
Yes. So for us there's a kind of gap, a gulf between the thought and the fact. But he says in that creation there was no gulf, there was no gap between the thought and the fact. They are responding to each other. The thought responds to the fact, and the fact responds to the thought, like two birds who are calling to each other. The will obeyed the thought, and the act obeyed the will, so that a thought gets implemented just exactly in the way that it has been thought. In our case, there's so many interferences and interruptions that very rarely the thought gets implemented just the way it was thought. And between all the different souls, there's a harmony woven, connecting them, and harmonizing them. And time becomes divine because it's married to eternity, it's united with eternity, it's in constant contact with eternity. So it's not time as we know it, it's divine time. I think we have to stop there. Next time we'll read on about life and matter. Shall we read these lines together? In this vast outbreak of perfection's law, imposing its fixity on the flux of things, he saw a hierarchy of lucent planes enfiefed to this highest kingdom of God's state. Attuning to one truth, their own right rule, each housed the gladness of a bright degree, alone in beauty, perfect in self-kind, an image cast by one deep truth's absolute, married to all in happy difference. Each gave its powers to help its neighbour's paths, but suffered no diminution by the gift. Profiteers of a mystic interchange, they grew by what they took and what they gave. All others they felt as their own complements, one in the might and joy of multitude. Even in the poise where oneness draws apart to feel the rapture of its separate selves, the soul in its solitude yearned towards the all, and the many turned to look back at the one. An all-revealing, all-creating bliss, seeking for forms to manifest truths divine, aligned in their significant mystery, the gleams of the symbols of the ineffable, blazoned like hues upon a colourless air, on the white purity of the witness soul. These hues were the very prism of the Supreme, His beauty, power, delight, creation's cause. A vast truth consciousness took up these signs to pass them on to some divine child heart that looked on them with laughter and delight and joyed in these transcendent images, living and real as the truths they house. The Spirit's white neutrality became a playground of miracles, a rendezvous for the secret powers of a mystic timelessness. It made of space a marvel house of God. It poured through time its works of ageless might, unveiled, seen as a luring, rapturous face, the wonder and beauty of its love and force. The eternal goddess moved in her cosmic house, sporting with God as a mother with her child. To him the universe was her bosom of love. His toys were the immortal verities. All here self-lost had there its divine place. The powers that here betray our hearts and err were there sovereign in truth, perfect in joy, masters in a creation without flaw, possessors of their own infinitude. Their mind, a splendid sun of vision's rays, shaped substance by the glory of its thoughts, and moved amidst the grandeur of its dreams. Imagination's great ensorceling rod summoned the unknown and gave to it a home. Outspread luxuriantly in golden air, truth's iris-colored wings of fantasy, or sang to the intuitive heart of joy, wonder's dream notes that bring the real close. Its power that makes the unknowable near and true, in the temple of the ideal shrined the One. It peopled thought and mind and happy sense, filled with bright aspects of the might of God and living persons of the One Supreme. The speech that voices the ineffable, the ray revealing unseen presences, the virgin forms through which the formless shines, the word that ushers divine experience, and the ideas that crowd the infinite. There was no gulf between the thought and fact. Ever they replied like bird to calling bird. The will obeyed the thought, the act the will. There was a harmony woven twixt soul and soul, a marriage with eternity divinized time.